in order to raise capital in the space, it's all about trust, right? And your ability to really, create trust with potential investors is paramount to your ability to really scale and grow in this space.
Welcome to the Freedom Point Real Estate Podcast, where we talk about creating more time freedom through passive real estate investing. Passive investing in real estate challenges conventional investment wisdom. We are passionate about learning and sharing resources with others who are ready to transform their investing mindset. Quick disclaimer as always, I am not a CPA, I am not an attorney or a financial advisor. This is not financial advice, not telling you or anyone else what to do. The views and opinions expressed in these podcasts are provided for education and informational purposes only and are not necessarily the views of my employer. I'm glad you're here. Now let's dig in.
All right, welcome back, Freedom Point Podcast listeners. I'm your host, Jeremy Dyer. A little bit of a different podcast for us today. I'm coming to you live from the Best Ever Conference in Salt Lake City, Utah, where I would describe this event as really being the Super Bowl of real estate. And I am here with not only my friend, but also partner and colleague, Nick Stromwall. Nick, welcome to the show.
Super excited to be here. There's so much energy when you're in live person, connecting with people. The magic is really outside of the ballroom. Even though the speakers have been pretty phenomenal, the magic is outside the ballroom.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. There's nothing more impactful, in my opinion, than those one-on-one, genuine, authentic relationships that you can build with others. And guests, we're going to do something a little bit different today. We're going to do this in reverse. So while I'm typically the host today, I'm going to be the guest on my own podcast. And I have Nick Stromwall here, who's going to host the event for us today.
Yeah, watch out, Jeremy, because I got some special questions I didn't share with you beforehand. So, Jeremy, can you share a little bit about your background? What brought you into the capital raising space, and what brought you into be the VP of Capital Formation at Rise 48?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. So a lot of my listeners already know kind of my backstory. Got involved in real estate back in 2012 as a fix and flipper because my wife and I thought it looked super sexy on HGTV. 2015 rolls around, we double down on kids, go from 2 to 4. And honestly, our stepping away from active real estate investing and going passively was really just a bandwidth decision, right? So 2015, invested in our first real estate syndication as a passive investor. From that point now up until today, we're in 37 investment properties, multiple different markets, different sponsors, different asset classes as passive investors. And 2 years ago, I started making my personal and professional network aware of the types of investing that we were already personally doing, okay? And so it was really 2 years ago that I realized, wow, we have strength in numbers, okay? I have a community of other people that are high net worth sales professionals, entrepreneurs, right, in the space that also had a desire to diversify outside of Wall Street and into Main Street. They wanted to invest in real estate, but they too also have bandwidth issues and didn't, quite frankly, want to take on the risk of swinging hammers and evicting tenants in the evenings and weekends, right? So I started bringing my investment opportunities to my own personal and professional network, and lo and behold, there was a lot of other people like me that wanted to get involved. And so really what we did is we used our collective community and the amount of capital that we were able to raise to gain access to best-in-class sponsors that might not be made available on your own. We also used our leverage as a community of investors to be able to negotiate a better return profile with the lead sponsor. And that's really where Starting Point Capital, my business, was born just 2 years ago. And fast forward to today, my wife and I have really scaled up and grown that company to the point in which it made sense for me to exit my W-2 job and instead just purely focus on real estate. And I sought after Rise 48 Equity as a place to continue my career. I call it Jeremy 2.0. Why? Because they are, in fact, that best-in-class sponsor. I've invested my own money into 15 of their deals in just the last 2 years. I've been able to look at the, what's under the hood, behind the curtain, so to speak, to really vet them out as not just a good, operator to help my investors place their capital with, but also a place that I wanted to continue my own personal and professional journey as well.
Awesome answer. And what are you doing as your new role, the VP of Capital Formation? Walk us through the types of activities that you're doing, the type of people that you're wanting to connect with.
Yeah, great question. And, really, I was very blessed in the space to be able to raise, as much capital as I have in just the last 2 years, doing it part-time. And so really my role within Rise is to help other people achieve a similar level of success as I did, right? So my target within Rise 48 is really those fund managers that are out there that want to really monetize their own personal and professional network, or maybe they're folks in the space today, that are getting stagnant in their ability to grow, their investor count and increase the amount of capital that they're capable of raising on a per deal basis. So my focus is to really help coach, mentor, guide them, establish that relationship with them to really provide as much support as I can through really a very service-based type of a model, right? So again, my role within the organization is really to find, the capital, whether that be through our fund manager relationships, RIAs, broker dealers, family offices, et cetera.
So you've worked with a lot of different sponsors. You've raised on a lot of different deals. What sets apart Rise 48 from the rest?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I really kind of break it down into maybe just a few T's, if you don't mind. Really the trust factor, the transparency, the tertiary market that they're in, the team that they're surrounded with. Really, at the end of the day, there's a lot of sponsors out there in the space that are syndicating apartment buildings. They're value add, or maybe they're in some other asset class, right? And some groups are 2 men in a truck, and some have teams of 300. Some have done 10 million in transaction volume, and some have done multiple billions in transaction volume, right? So I really try to look for those best in class operators that have the track record where they've maybe gone through real estate cycles in the past. They've had some headwinds in their business. They were able to survive through those instances. I like to say that birds fly, fish swim, and real estate falls apart, right? It's just what happens in the industry. So or investors that are looking to place their capital, or fund managers that are looking to partner with a best in class operator, really need to do their own due diligence. And it's not just the due diligence of having a single phone call with the operator, right? It's asking other fund managers in the space. It's talking to other LPs in the space, right? It's finding out, when times are tough in the industry, how transparent, is that operator going to be when they experience headwinds in their organization.
Yeah, that's great. And even getting a little bit more into the minutia, having been a fund manager with Rise and now on staff with Rise, there are a couple additional things that Rise does for fund managers that makes it completely easy to come in. Could you just unpack a couple of those things that we're doing?
Yeah, I'm really thankful that you brought that up. And, I wouldn't have been able to ride two horses at the same time for the past 2.5 years. Most of my listeners know I just exited a corporate job in the tech sales space after almost a 25-year period. Well, the last 2 years, I've been building up and scaling up and growing up my capital raising company, and it would have been impossible for me to be able to have the level of success that I've had if it wasn't for the fact that I was partnered with best-in-class operators. But second to that, really aligning with those operators that really truly make it very turnkey for me as a capital raiser to be able to raise the amount of money that I need. Because the truth is that there's a lot of administrative functions that go into, launching a new investment opportunity to your investors, becoming that lead attraction magnet, that you need to become in the space, and really rebranding yourself, or, enhancing the brand that you already have in the space. And so aligning with an operator that takes care of the marketing, they take care of, the back office support when it comes to, doing things like your annual tax return, for example, blue sky filings, monthly investor reporting, distributions out to your investors. So what I really appreciate about Rise 48 is they really come alongside that fund manager and truly help them from acquisition all the way through disposition, on each project that they choose to partner with us on.
So if a fund manager has their own brand, how does that impact, let's just say, those monthly reports? What happens?
Yeah, it's a great question. And really what we allow the fund manager to do is to carry with them their own brand. We want each of our fund managers to continue to grow up and scale up the brand that they've already built or they're in the process of building. So really everything is customizable in terms of co-branded or just branded, quite frankly, to their own individual capital raising business or entity. So it's really important for us that our fund managers do not lose their identity. Rather, we come alongside them to help them promote and really scale up and grow their individual brand.
So it's almost as if fund managers can plug into the vehicle that we've created with Rise 48 and continue to grow their business. How do you see your role coming alongside of fund managers to help them grow? What are some things that you're doing personally to help that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And every fund manager obviously comes to us or is working with us in different capacities. We have fund managers that have never done it before. and they want to have the same or similar success that maybe I had in this space. And then we've got other folks that have been doing it for several years, right? So it's really coming along that fund manager to find out where they're at in kind of their growth trajectory, how much time, effort, and energy they want to put into growing their business, and really meeting them where they're at right now. And the truth is that there's some fund managers that, want to talk to me once a quarter, and there's some that want to get on my calendar every week. And in some cases, it's because they're looking for a little pixie dust for me to sprinkle on their head, or perhaps maybe, they're looking for a shoulder to cry on, or anything in between. But, my goal is obviously, and the way that I'm personally incentivized, from a compensation perspective, is I want them to be successful. I want them to go from raising 6 figures per deal to raising 7 figures. And if they're already in that place, I want them to go from, 7 figures to multiple 7 figures, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's great. So you gave a talk here at the Best Ever Conference. It was a really impactful. You gave us a lot of nuggets. We don't have very much time on this podcast, but could you give your top 3 nuggets for capital raisers and fund managers?
Yeah, I'll try to give you only 3, but I did speak on the psychology of capital raising, which was a tremendous opportunity for me to be able to speak to the audience here on the main stage. And really the message that I really wanted to drive home to people is that in order to raise capital in the space, it's all about trust, right? And your ability to really, create trust with potential investors is paramount to your ability to really scale and grow in this space. And trust is really built one drop at a time. Obviously it's lost in bucketfuls. It was quite frankly easy for me to get into this space because I already had a big bench of people that already knew, liked, and trust me. Well, why did they? Because again, who I am is a very trust-based individual, right? I know that in order to build trust with somebody, that it's going to be built one drop at a time, and to know that it has to be my authentic self, right? I can't, leverage the power of AI. I can't leverage the power of social media to get somebody to trust me, right? So I really need to come across, whether it is on social media or in person with people, it's really foundational that we understand that it's us being our genuine, authentic self and our ability to connect with people on a one-on-one basis that's going to ultimately get capital across the finish line.
I was personally helped by, as a fund manager, someone raising capital, the things not to say and the things to say. Could you maybe share with the audience a couple of those things?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, sometimes people, as they're looking to quote unquote chase after capital, right? They might reach out to an investor by saying something like, "Hey, I'm just calling to check in," right? Well, instead of maybe saying that, because everybody, quite frankly, says that, right? You need to separate yourself, because when you're saying, "I'm just calling to check in," for example, or just checking in to follow up, really what you're telling the potential investor is that you're a salesperson, because that's what sales guys do, right? But we need to instead maybe shift that line of thinking to something like, for example, "Hey, based upon our last conversation, have you been able to give that some thought or consideration? Is there anything else on your mind, that I might be able to help you with," right? Versus I'm just calling to check in or just calling to follow up.
That might be the golden nugget of this podcast. So if you're a capital raiser, this is just a drop in the bucket. And I think you've even unpacked this in further detail. Could you tell us about the book you've just released?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Thanks for the plug there. So last year I spent about 600 hours of my life, in addition to, trying to be a good husband, good father, continuing to raise, capital, while also, by the way, still having that W-2 job, which I exited from just a few weeks ago. But during that time, I decided, you know what, I need to bring my journey into this space to life. Everybody's attracted by my story, right? And so I spent 600 hours last year writing a book called The Fundamental Investor, and very thankful, Nick, that book during the first 2 weeks did reach the #1 bestseller on Amazon in the category of real estate investing.
That's phenomenal. It's one of my favorite books. I'm recommending it to all my investors and highly recommend you pick up a copy. There'll be a link in the show notes below. So here's just one more question. You talk about balance. You have a professional life, you have your capital raising business, but you're also a family man. How do you balance your professional drive and ambition with also showing up powerfully at home?
Yeah, honestly, Nick, that's the toughest job, right? Because on the one hand, I'm an achievement junkie, right? I'm a what do I call it? A achievement addict, okay? And on the other hand, I know that I need to be intentional with my wife and my children and those that are in my personal professional circle. So it's really, honestly, Nick, it's a daily reminder, right? It's a daily reminder that while my professional journey in life has all kinds of different ups and downs and distractions, and it's going to, continue to suck a lot of my time, I need to be intentional with blocking certain times, certain events on my calendar that I'm prioritizing time, with my 4 children, that I have time every single day to be able to connect on a one-on-one level with each one of my children, separate from one another, and as well, obviously, spending time weekly dating my wife and being intentional, with building my relationship with her as well. Because for those that are married or maybe have been married before, marriage is not something that can run on autopilot. It takes work on both sides, and so, me continuing to invest in myself, invest in my relationship with my wife, invest in my children, that's paramount to me.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I've loved hearing stories about what you do with each of your kids. Even I think it's Thursday or Friday morning with your sons. Really cool. So, how does Rise's mission align with your personal values? And maybe even a double click into that, how has your faith journey influenced your career path and even the decisions you've made?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, I one of the things that I really like about Rise is the level of integrity, the level of trust, the level of transparency that they've had with me as a limited partner investor with my own money going into their deals, plus the deals that I brought to my greater investor network is really important to me. And I know that there are good operators in this space and there's certainly bad operators in this space. And so I'm thankful to have been really blessed, honestly, to have been able to identify Rise as being that gold standard, that best class sponsor in the space, and really hitching my wagon, so to speak, up to them. And the more that I continue to get to know the leadership within the organization and the team, that I'm now surrounded with, the more it reinforces that I personally made the right decision. And it also reinforces the fact that I have a tremendous fiduciary responsibility as well to protect our investors, investment and trust in us. And so I'm thankful to have been a part of that team. As it relates to my faith journey, obviously God's paramount in my life. Jesus Christ is my Savior. And so the decisions that I make, day in and day out are really, surrounded in prayer. I've got other people praying for me. The ways that I interact with others, I hope I'm leading people, to a relationship with Christ as well. But yeah, I mean, I'm just like everybody else in the space today. I make mistakes, right? Whether it be, orally, written, right? The interactions that I have with others, I'm just trying to serve others and be the best steward that I can.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love the culture that's being developed. Having breakfast with Zach this morning, there's a lot of opportunity in the space to lead with your character and the convictions that you have. And I see you doing that. I see Zach doing that, and the other leaders here at Rise. So, just question, when you think about mentorship and how does mentorship play a factor in your life? How do you plan on mentoring the fund managers and capital partners that Rise has already established and the ones that we're looking to establish?
Yeah, I would say, mentorship just in general has been incredibly important in my own personal life. I've got a number of people that are part of my own personal, board of directors. It's folks that are, at the same stage in life as I'm in. It's guys that are 10 years older than I am, right? And they really call me up. Right, they're able to hold me accountable to certain things. I'm able to discuss some of the challenges, that I have, either personally or professionally. And I know and trust these folks to be able to really, breathe life into me, if that makes sense. And really, I'm taking that kind of same methodology from a mentorship perspective, and I'm now applying it to the fund manager community. And it's really my goal, really, to serve others, right? To be that mentor to another fund manager that, again, is looking to grow up and scale up their business. And I really have nothing to monetize from it. I'm not selling a master class. I'm not selling, $1,000 an hour for me to be your coach, right? These folks can reach out to me anytime. I'm always willing to serve, always willing to help, and really mentor, them through the process of really scaling up and growing up their individual capital raising businesses.
Okay, I'm going to zoom out a little bit. When you think about 5 to 10 years out, what kind of impact do you hope to make in the lives of the staff members, fund managers, and even investors that you're working with?
Yeah, I mean, I really want people to be the best versions of themselves, right? And I think in order to do that, people need to understand, like, the most important thing that you can do is to invest in yourself, right? And so find somebody in your life, whether it's me or somebody else, that can really, help support you from a mentorship perspective, really call you up, right? I would like the entire Rise organization to really adopt a service-based, mentality where we're here to serve others, whether it's serving our our LP investors, whether it's serving our really high net worth investors that are looking to make a legacy impact and make an impact in the world, in general, or if it's those fund managers that maybe they want to be on the same trajectory that I'm on. They have a full-time W-2'd, job right now. They're raising capital on the side as a side hustle, and they want to truly replace the dependence on that W-2 and go all in and raise capital full-time, right? I'm here to help provide that mentorship and guidance to those folks.
So how do you maintain your motivation? This is a pretty dynamic industry. A lot of things are happening. How do you stay motivated? What's your secret sauce?
Yeah, honestly, it's the feedback sometimes that I get from other people that the things that I've either said or I've done have had a material impact on their lives. And, unfortunately, we're not always in that position where we truly are able to thank others for the impact that they've had on their lives. But I've got plenty of people in my life that I know I've gone back to and I've told them, hey, you've been a mentor to me over the course of the last decade and you don't even know it, right? There's a lot of people in the real estate space that are the same way. There's people that I follow on podcasts. I've read their books, right? I've been following them for the last, several years really to learn from them. And they're making a giant impact upon my life. They're a mentor of mine. They don't even know it. And they're not even, I'm not even monetizing it or paying them anything for that type of advice. So I guess, it's really important for me to also, give back to others in that way. It really allows me to live a purpose-filled, purpose-driven, life to really truly make an impact on others.
Love that. So something that I don't think many people know about you is you like to achieve things. Can you tell us a little bit about your running career and where you see that going?
My running career. So just in full disclosure, I am a recovering marathon runner. Both literally and figuratively, if that makes sense. But yeah, I had a career in running. Actually, after my very first child was born, he's 18 now. I started running, and my wife says, "Well, you were probably running from your parenting responsibilities," which is not true. But that was a time in my life where, again, I'm an achievement junkie. At that point in my life, I was also the number one guy in North America in the tech sales business. So I think running gave me that next challenge. I knew I was never going to win the race, kind of a thing, but I always competed against myself. I always competed against me, having a better miles per hour or a better finish time. That was really my focus. And running also helped me in a huge way when it comes to just dealing with the daily pressures and the stresses of life, right? There's a certain thing about exercise and running, that allows us to really step away from, some of those pressures and really provide more clarity. For me, it was, sometimes a 20-mile run on a Saturday morning, all by yourself, right? 5 a.m. wake up time, it's 14, 15 degrees outside and you're going to go do a 20-mile and it's going to take you the next, 2 hours and 40 minutes. And it's just you, the trails, conversations with God, and just helped me really honestly to have more clarity, at a time where I really needed it because I was scaling up, my tech sales job. I became a father at that time, and it was just a really good time for me to be able to step away and meditate.
Love that. Having gone on a couple runs with you, you've kicked my butt a few times going up some steep hills. So I'm excited to continue to learn more about running with you. When you think about the future of capital and capital formation, new strategies, where do you see the future of capital formation evolving?
I'm Zach Captainstall, CEO and co-founder of Rise 48 Equity. Our goal is to help you protect and grow your wealth by investing in large multifamily apartment buildings. We do all the work as far as sourcing these large apartment buildings from the brokers, doing all of the on-site management with our vertically integrated property management company, doing all the renovations with our vertically integrated construction company. We completely rebrand the exteriors. We will renovate the interiors to our full platinum level scope, which increases the value of the asset to get that profit margin for the investor. If you'd like to learn about how you can partner with us on these exciting opportunities, and go to our website and set up a call with our team.
When you think about the future of capital and capital formation, new strategies, where do you see the future of capital formation evolving?
Yeah, I think really from a compliance perspective, capital raising is going to tend to gear towards more what's called the fund of funds model, where capital raisers can compliantly raise capital from their personal and professional network into a fund, and then that fund deploys its capital into the sponsor's, primary deal, okay? That way, capital raisers can be compliantly compensated through their fund, not directly from, the lead operator sponsor, which would be illegal according to the SEC. So everything that we do at Rise 48, is we're doing it with compliance in mind, right? So we want to make sure that we help capital raisers, raise as much money as they possibly can in a truly compliant way. Second to that, we see a huge opportunity in the broker-dealer space, RIA space, family office space. There's a lot of institutional money out there right now that needs a place, right? And so, our focus is also going to be, on that demographic and continuing to build out relationships with individuals that are capable of bringing larger check sizes into our deals.
Love that. Okay, so speak directly to that person. Maybe they've picked up a real estate related book. Maybe they've read Fundamental Investor. They want to begin raising capital. Give them the top 3 things that you'd recommend to get started.
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing is to first invest in yourself, right? So, my book is a great resource, The Fundamental Investor. Please do check it out if you haven't. But first continue to invest in yourself. Learn the business, right? If you don't understand and know the business, it's going to be difficult for you to have conversations with potential investors. Really the next thing is to start rebranding yourself. I started rebranding myself from being tech sales guy, 2.5 years ago to now, real estate guy, right? And a big part of that, wasn't me, telling people about new opportunities. It was just literally telling them what my story is, my journey, right? That's really how I started to kind of change my brand perception in the space, and then the next step, the third step is you got to just start having conversations, right? Capital isn't raised, okay? Capital is attracted. Right. And so if you can start creating a brand that people genuinely, want to get to know more about, whether that's, posts that you make on social media or just conversations that you have with your personal and professional network, that's how capital gets across the finish line. Okay. It's not spray and pray. All right. It's actually having genuine, authentic relationships with others. And quite frankly, some people call it a grind. But if you want to raise more capital, you simply need to have more conversations.
That's great. Final question, changing gears a little bit. What's a fun fact about yourself that most people don't know?
Well, I was going to say the marathon running, but you kind of already snuck that out. Maybe a lot of people don't know that my wife and I back in 2015 wanted to have more children, but we were not able to. We had 2 kids at the time, and we made the decision to adopt. The next question was, well, where from? So we looked at domestic, we looked at international. My wife and I both taught English in China when we were in college, and we fell in love with the culture and the people. So we made the decision to adopt back in 2015. Our goal was to adopt a daughter. And lo and behold, when the agency called us, they said, well, your number's up and we have your daughter, but she has a twin brother and you have 24 hours to make a decision. So that was an interesting period in our life back in 2015. Our plan was to adopt one. We adopted 2, both Jet and Juliana, and they're such a blessing in our life, and they've been a part of our life really for the last decade now.
Amazing. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. Do you have any other final words you'd like to leave before we close this one up?
No, I really appreciate it. And thanks, listening audience, for allowing us to kind of do these roles in reverse here. And really appreciate the time today and look forward to having you join us on the next episode.
So if you're a fund manager and you're looking to begin your capital raising business, there's going to be some links in the show notes below. Jeremy and myself, we'd love to help walk this journey with you to help you become the person that you want to become. So thanks so much for listening in today.
Thank you for hanging out with us today and for listening to the Freedom Point podcast, powered by Starting Point Capital. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Nothing said on this show should be considered financial advice. Before making any financial decision, please consult with a professional. This show is copyrighted by the Freedom Point podcast. Written permissions must be granted before syndication or rebroadcasting. If you're interested in connecting, you can find contact information at startingpointcapital.com.